It was a crisp autumn morning when retired Marine Cooper pulled into the Rest Haven truck stop just outside Nashville. He'd been driving for hours, making his way back home from visiting family in North Carolina. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun began its slow climb over the horizon. Cooper wasn't planning to stop, but his coffee thermos had run dry and his legs were cramping from the long drive. The rest area was relatively quiet at this early hour, with just a few trucks idling in the parking lot and the occasional family stretching their legs after overnight travel. As he walked toward the building, something caught his attention. It wasn't obvious at first, just a feeling, really. The kind of instinct you develop after years of military service and security work. A black SUV was parked near the building's entrance, its engine running. Through the windows, he could see two people inside. A man in his 40s behind the wheel and a young black girl in the passenger seat. Under normal circumstances, Cooper would have walked right past, but there was something about the girl's body language that made him pause. She sat unnaturally still, her shoulders tense, her hands folded in her lap. Then, as if sensing his presence, she glanced up and their eyes met for just a moment. In that brief instant, she raised her hand in what might have looked like a casual gesture to most people. But Cooper recognized it immediately. The viral hand signal that had been circulating on social media. A silent cry for help. Palm facing outward, thumb tucked in, fingers closing over the thumb. He'd seen the training videos shared by anti-trafficking organizations showing how this simple gesture could save lives. Cooper's heart rate quickened, but his military training kicked in. He maintained his casual demeanor, pulling out his phone as if checking messages. From his peripheral vision, he observed more details about the situation. The man in the driver's seat was trying too hard to appear relaxed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The girl's clothing looked rumpled, and a small backpack sat at her feet. What struck Cooper most was the contrast between the man's forced casualness and the girl's obvious distress. She kept her movements small, controlled, as if afraid to draw attention. But her eyes, they told a different story. They darted around, looking for help, for anyone who might understand the signal she'd just shown. Cooper walked past the vehicle, his mind racing through possible scenarios. He couldn't just confront them directly. That could put the girl in more danger if he was right about the situation. But he couldn't walk away either, not when his gut was screaming that something was terribly wrong. He entered the rest stop building, positioning himself near a window where he could keep an eye on the SUV while appearing to sip his newly purchased coffee. The morning rush was starting to pick up, with more travelers filtering in for bathroom breaks and breakfast. Cooper noticed how the man in the SUV tensed up whenever a police car or highway patrol vehicle pulled into the lot for their routine checks. The girl made the signal again, this time when a mother with two children walked past their car. But the mother was busy corralling her kids, not noticing the silent plea for help. Cooper could see the disappointment on the girl's face, the way her shoulders slumped slightly before she resumed her rigid posture. Using his body to shield his phone from view, Cooper dialed 911. He kept his voice low and calm, methodically relaying the details to the dispatcher. The car's make, model, and license plate. The description of both occupants. The hand signal he'd witnessed. His own military background added weight to his observations, and the dispatcher assured him that highway patrol units were already being redirected to the location. Those next few minutes felt like hours. Cooper maintained his position, pretending to work on his laptop while actually monitoring the situation. He noticed how the man kept checking his mirrors, his agitation growing with each passing minute. The girl remained still, but her eyes continued to scan her surroundings, perhaps hoping that someone had understood her signal. More travelers came and went. A group of truckers gathered for their morning coffee. The smell of breakfast sandwiches wafted from the small cafe inside. It all felt surreally normal while Cooper waited, keeping his eyes trained on the black SUV, silently willing the girl to stay strong for just a few minutes longer. Through the window, Cooper spotted the first highway patrol car entering the parking lot. The officer drove past casually, as if making a routine stop. Then a second patrol car appeared, approaching from the opposite direction. Cooper watched as the man in the SUV suddenly sat up straighter, his hand moving toward the gear shift. But before the situation could escalate, two more patrol cars pulled in, effectively blocking any escape route. The response was quick, professional, and overwhelming, exactly what was needed to prevent any dangerous reactions from the suspect. Cooper remained inside, watching as the officers approached the vehicle with practiced caution. He saw the girl's hand shake as she opened the car door, saw her legs nearly buckle as an officer helped her out and led her to safety. The man was removed from the vehicle and handcuffed without incident, his face a mask of frustrated anger. Only then did Cooper step outside, approaching one of the officers to provide his statement. As he recounted what he'd observed, he kept glancing at the girl. She was wrapped in a blanket now, sitting in the back of an ambulance as paramedics checked her vital signs. Despite her ordeal, she sat up straight, her chin held high. When she happened to look in Cooper's direction, she gave him a small nod, a silent thank you that spoke volumes. Later, as Cooper finally continued his journey home, he couldn't stop thinking about how a simple hand gesture, learned from social media, had potentially saved a life. It reminded him that in this modern world, sometimes the smallest actions could have the biggest impact. He also knew that this was just the beginning of a longer story, one that would soon reveal itself to be even more significant than anyone at that rest stop could have imagined that morning. The sun was fully up now, transforming what had started as a routine morning into something far more meaningful. Cooper made a mental note to share this experience with his fellow veterans, knowing how important it was to stay vigilant and aware, even in the most ordinary moments. Because sometimes, like today, those ordinary moments could become extraordinary opportunities to help someone in desperate need. The moments after recognizing the distress signal felt both fast and slow for Cooper. His years of military training had taught him something crucial. In critical situations, it's not just about what you see, but how you process it. Standing there in the rest stop, pretending to check his phone, his mind worked through the scene like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Every detail suddenly carried weight. The girl's clothing. She wore a light jacket despite the warm weather, possibly hiding bruises or marks. Her hair was unwashed, and dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept properly in days. The man's body language screamed controlled aggression, the kind Cooper had seen countless times during his security work. The way he positioned himself, slightly turned toward the girl, was a supple form of intimidation. Drawing from his experience, Cooper knew the next few minutes were critical. During his service years, he'd received specialized training in identifying human trafficking situations. The signs were textbook. A young person appearing submissive and fearful, an older companion who seemed overly controlling, and most tellingly, the desperate attempt to signal for help. Coffee cup in hand, Cooper made his way to a bench outside the rest stop building. He positioned himself where he could maintain visual contact with the SUV while appearing to enjoy the morning air. His phone became his lifeline, but he knew better than to make it obvious he was watching. Years of surveillance work had taught him how to observe without drawing attention. He noticed more details that confirmed his suspicions. The SUV's license plate was from 2 states away. The windows were tinted just dark enough to make it difficult to see inside from a distance, legal but suspicious in context. The man kept checking his mirrors too frequently, a clear sign of paranoia. These weren't just random observations, they were pieces of evidence Cooper mentally catalogued for law enforcement. While maintaining his casual appearance, Cooper dialed 911. His voice remained steady and professional as he spoke to the dispatcher, the same tone he'd used during countless military operations. "I'm at the Rest Haven stop on Interstate 40, he began, keeping his voice low. "I have a suspected trafficking situation." He provided clear, concise details, everything from the vehicle description to the specific hand signal he'd witnessed. The dispatcher asked if he could safely maintain visual contact with the vehicle. Cooper confirmed, all while appearing to scroll through his phone. His peripheral vision never left the SUV. He noticed how the man would tense up whenever service workers or other travelers passed near their vehicle. The girl remained still, but her eyes kept moving, searching for help. Cooper's mind flashed back to his training sessions. They had always emphasized the importance of being a good witness rather than a hero. Direct intervention could put both the victim and bystanders at risk. The key was to be patient, observant, and ready to assist law enforcement when they arrived. He thought about his own daughter back home, how vulnerable young people could be. This wasn't just about applying training anymore. It was about potentially saving someone's child. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders, familiar and heavy, like his old military pack. Using his phone's notes app as cover, Cooper documented everything he observed. The exact time he first noticed the signal. The man's physical description: approximately 6 feet tall, medium build, wearing a dark blue jacket. The girl's apparent age and condition. Any small details that might help build a case. His military experience had taught him that seemingly insignificant details often proved crucial later. Other travelers moved through the rest stop, unaware of the drama unfolding before them. A family with small children piled out of their minivan, laughing and stretching. Truck drivers made their way to and from the cafe, carrying steaming cups of coffee. The morning sun continued its climb, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Cooper noticed the man checking his watch repeatedly. Experience told him this meant they might try to leave soon. His heart rate increased slightly, but his exterior remained calm. This was like those long nights on watch during his service, staying alert, staying focused, waiting for exactly the right moment. The dispatcher's voice came through his phone again, updating him that units were nearby. Cooper acknowledged with a quiet "understood," a response that felt as natural as breathing after his years of service. He could feel a familiar surge of adrenaline, carefully controlled by years of training. Through it all, Cooper maintained his cover of a tired traveler taking a break. He'd learned long ago that the best way to avoid detection was to blend in, to become part of the background. He sipped his coffee, checked his phone, and stretched occasionally, all while keeping the SUV in his field of vision. When he spotted the first patrol car entering the lot, Cooper felt a surge of relief, quickly tempered by caution. He knew these next few moments would be crucial. Too many times, he'd seen situations escalate when suspects realized they'd been discovered. His body tensed slightly, ready to assist if needed, though he hoped his role would remain that of a witness. The timing had to be perfect. Multiple patrol cars arrived within moments of each other, coordinating their approach with the kind of precision Cooper recognized from his own tactical training. He watched as they executed a textbook vehicle containment, leaving no route for escape. As the officers approached the vehicle, Cooper stood slowly, ready to provide backup if needed. His training had prepared him for moments like this, being ready without being obvious, alert without being aggressive. He watched as the officers handled the situation with professional efficiency, securing both the suspect and the young victim. Later, giving his statement to the officers, Cooper provided every detail he'd gathered. The professional language came naturally as he described what he'd witnessed. One of the officers, a former Marine himself, nodded in recognition of Cooper's methodical approach to the situation. The morning's events reinforced something Cooper had learned long ago: training never really leaves you. Whether it's military service, law enforcement, or any kind of specialized preparation, these skills become part of who you are. Today, that training had potentially helped save a young life. As things calmed down and the scene was secured, Cooper reflected on how his past had prepared him for this moment. Every training session, every exercise, every lesson learned in service had played a part in helping him recognize and respond to this situation. It wasn't just about knowing what to do. It was about knowing how to do it in a way that kept everyone safe. The sun was now high in the sky, transforming what had started as a routine stop into something much more significant. Cooper knew that his role in this story wasn't over. There would be statements to give, possibly court testimony later. But for now, he was grateful that his training had helped him be in the right place, at the right time, with the right knowledge to make a difference. The rest stop parking lot transformed from a peaceful morning scene into a carefully orchestrated operation in mere minutes. State troopers arrived with silent efficiency, their patrol cars strategically blocking every possible exit route. The morning sun glinted off their windshields as they moved into position, creating a perfect containment zone around the black SUV. The first patrol car pulled up casually, as if making a routine stop. The second approached from the opposite direction, boxing the suspect's vehicle between them. 2 more units arrived simultaneously, their timing impeccable. Through the rest stop window, Cooper watched as the trap closed, clean, professional, and decisive. Inside the SUV, the change in atmosphere was immediate. The man's posture shifted from casual alertness to rigid tension. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, and his eyes darted between mirrors, searching for an escape route that no longer existed. The girl remained perfectly still, her shoulders hunched, as if trying to make herself smaller. The lead officer stepped out of his vehicle, his movements deliberate and controlled. He approached the driver's side window with his hand resting near his belt, ready but not threatening. Two other officers moved to flank the SUV, while a female officer positioned herself near the passenger side, focused on the young girl's safety. The moment crystallized when the driver made his move. He threw the SUV into reverse, but the officers had anticipated this. Their positioning left him nowhere to go. The engine revved uselessly as the reality of his situation sank in. Through the windshield, the officers could see his expression change from desperate calculation to defeated recognition. "Turn off the vehicle and show me your hands." The lead officer's command cut through the morning air, clear and authoritative. Other travelers at the rest stop had frozen in place, sensing the tension but staying well back from the scene. The smell of burnt rubber from the failed escape attempt hung in the air. For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. The driver's hands tightened further on the steering wheel, his knuckles white with strain. The girl's eyes were wide, darting between the officers and her captor. Cooper, still watching from his position, recognized this as the critical moment when situations either resolve peacefully or spiral out of control. Then, slowly, the sound of the engine died. The driver's hands rose, shaking slightly, into clear view. The first officer maintained his position while his partner moved forward to open the driver's door. The arrest itself was textbook, swift, professional, and controlled. The suspect was removed from the vehicle, patted down, and handcuffed without incident. But the real focus was on the passenger side of the SUV. The female officer gently opened the door, speaking softly to the girl inside. "You're safe now. We're here to help you. Can you come with me?" Her voice was steady, reassuring, the kind of voice that builds bridges of trust in moments of crisis. The girl's movement from the vehicle was uncertain at first, her legs trembling as they touched the ground. The female officer stayed close, offering support without crowding her. Another officer brought a blanket, wrapping it around the girl's shoulders as she was guided toward the waiting ambulance. Paramedics approached with practiced calm, their presence adding another layer of professional support to the scene. They worked quickly but gently, checking vital signs while speaking in low, soothing tones. The girl's responses were quiet but clear. She was alert, aware, and beginning to realize she was truly safe. Other officers had begun their initial investigation of the vehicle. They moved with purpose, documenting everything, collecting potential evidence. Their training showed in every careful movement, every photographed detail, every noted observation. This wasn't just an arrest. It was the beginning of building a solid case. Cooper provided his statement to one of the detectives who had arrived on scene. He recounted everything he had observed, the hand signal, the suspicious behavior, the details that had triggered his concern. The detective's notebook filled with precise notes, each detail potentially crucial for the investigation ahead. The rest stop had grown quieter as the situation unfolded. Regular travelers kept their distance, some watching from inside the building, others quietly returning to their vehicles and continuing their journeys. The staff maintained their routine, but their eyes kept returning to the scene, understanding they had witnessed something significant. The girl was now sitting in the back of the ambulance, a social worker beside her. The change in her demeanor was subtle but noticeable. Her shoulders had relaxed slightly, and she had accepted a bottle of water. She was speaking softly to the social worker, each word another step toward safety. The suspect was already secured in the back of a patrol car, his expression unreadable behind the tinted windows. Two officers stood guard, while others continued their methodical processing of the scene. Evidence bags were filled, photographs taken, statements recorded. The precision of their work reflected years of training and experience. Near the ambulance, the female officer who had helped the girl was speaking with the paramedics and social worker, coordinating the next steps. Their conversation was focused and professional, each person understanding their role in helping this young survivor begin her journey to recovery. The morning had grown warmer, the sun now high enough to cast shorter shadows across the parking lot. What had started as a routine traffic stop had evolved into something much more significant, a life saved, a criminal court, a tragic story interrupted before it could become worse. Cooper watched as the ambulance finally pulled away, its lights flashing but siren silent. The patrol car containing the suspect followed, headed toward the county jail. Other officers remained behind, completing their investigation, ensuring every detail was properly documented and preserved. The scene gradually returned to normal, though an undercurrent of significance remained. Staff members resumed their duties, new travelers arrived unaware of what had transpired, and the day continued its forward march. But for those who had witnessed these critical moments, something had changed, a reminder that everyday places could become settings for life-changing events. As the last patrol car prepared to leave, the lead detective approached Cooper one final time. They exchanged contact information for future reference, knowing that this case would likely require further testimony. The detective's handshake was firm, a silent acknowledgement of Cooper's role in the morning's events. The rest stop slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the impact of those critical moments would ripple outward, touching lives far beyond this parking lot. Sometimes, the detective had noted, the biggest cases start with the smallest details, a hand signal, an observant witness, and officers ready to respond at a moment's notice. Hours after the dramatic rescue at the rest stop, investigators began uncovering the true scope of what they'd stumbled upon. In a quiet room at the local police station, the young girl finally felt safe enough to share her story. Her voice was soft but steady as she revealed how she'd been missing from her home in North Carolina for 3 weeks. The girl's parents were contacted immediately. They had been searching desperately for their daughter since she disappeared after school one afternoon. The mother collapsed into tears when she received the call, while the father had to sit down, overwhelmed by emotion. They immediately began the 4-hour drive to reunite with their daughter. During her initial interview with a specialized youth counselor, the girl explained how she'd learned the hand signal that saved her life. "I saw it on social media," she explained, her fingers tracing the motion on the table. "They showed how to do it without anyone noticing. I kept practicing it in secret, waiting for the right moment." She had memorized the signal, hoping she'd never need to use it, but grateful she knew it when the time came. The investigation team worked through the night, piecing together a complex web of information. The suspect's phone revealed connections to a larger trafficking network operating across multiple states. Text messages, location data, and contact lists painted a disturbing picture of organized criminal activity. Back at her family's home, police discovered the girl had been targeted through a popular social media platform. The suspect had spent weeks building trust, using a fake profile and pretending to be a teenager. Officers found hundreds of similar profiles linked to the same network, each designed to lure unsuspecting young people. The detective in charge stood before a wall covered in photos and maps, red strings connecting various locations. 3 states, 12 potential victims, and a network that had operated undetected for months. The Rest Stop rescue wasn't just a single success, it was the thread that could unravel an entire criminal operation. The girl's bravery in using the signal had created a breakthrough moment. Her detailed testimony provided investigators with crucial information, locations where she'd been held, conversations she'd overheard, and descriptions of other people involved in the network. Each detail was another piece of the puzzle. In the hospital, doctors gently treated her for dehydration and exhaustion. Despite her ordeal, she remained strong, answering questions whenever she felt able. The social worker assigned to her case was amazed by her resilience. "She's not just a victim," the social worker noted in her report. "She's a survivor who helped expose something much bigger." The emotional reunion with her parents took place under the watchful eyes of counselors and support staff. Her mother rushed forward, enveloping her in a tight embrace that seemed to last forever. Her father stood close by, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. The room fell silent, allowing this family their private moment of healing. Later that evening, the girl shared more of her story with investigators. She described how she'd almost used the signal several times before, but the timing never felt right. "I was scared they would notice," she explained. "But when I saw the man at the rest stop watching carefully, something told me he would understand." The investigation expanded rapidly. Local police departments in 3 states coordinated their efforts, sharing information and resources. Evidence collected from the suspect's vehicle led to multiple addresses. Search warrants were executed simultaneously to prevent other members of the network from destroying evidence. The girl's phone, recovered from the suspect's vehicle, provided another breakthrough. Hidden in her photo gallery were pictures she'd managed to take secretly, images of locations, other victims, and even license plate numbers. She had been gathering evidence all along, waiting for a chance to get it to authorities. Computer forensics teams worked around the clock, tracing digital footprints across social media platforms and messaging apps. They discovered the network had been using sophisticated methods to avoid detection, but now their security was compromised. One rescue had created a domino effect that threatened their entire operation. As news of the rescue spread through law enforcement channels, other departments began reviewing their missing persons cases with fresh eyes. Similar patterns emerged: young people disappearing after social media contact, the same types of fake profiles, identical grooming techniques. The girl's parents, still processing their range of emotions, agreed to work with authorities to share their story. They wanted other families to know about the hand signal, about the warning signs they'd missed, about the importance of monitoring social media activity. Their pain was still raw, but their determination to help others was stronger. Support services quickly mobilized around the family. Counselors specialized in trauma recovery began working with the girl. Her school arranged for gradual reintegration when she felt ready. The community rallied around them, providing meals, emotional support, and privacy as they began their healing journey. Local law enforcement organized a private briefing for the girl's family, explaining how their daughter's rescue had sparked a multi-state investigation. The father, holding his wife's hand tightly, asked what would happen next. The lead detective assured them that their daughter's safety and recovery were the priority, while the investigation would continue building its case. At the end of that long first day of freedom, the girl sat in her hospital room, surrounded by family, finally feeling secure. A sketch artist worked with her, creating detailed drawings of places and people she remembered. Each sketch brought new leads for investigators to follow. The original rest stop where it all began had been transformed into an active crime scene. Forensics teams combed through security footage, interviewed staff, and gathered physical evidence. Every detail mattered in building a case that would ensure justice and prevent other families from experiencing similar trauma. As night fell, investigators gathered in their command center, surrounded by evidence of a criminal network that was finally being exposed. Photos of the rest stop rescue were pinned to their board, a reminder that sometimes the smallest actions, like a simple hand signal, could spark momentous changes. The girl's story was far from over, but she had taken the first steps toward healing. Her courage in signaling for help, her resilience in surviving, and her strength in helping investigators would impact countless lives. As one detective noted in his report, sometimes the biggest cases break because one person is brave enough to ask for help, and another is observant enough to notice. The investigation headquarters buzzed with activity as detectives from 3 states coordinated their efforts. Maps lined the walls, red lines tracing the network's trafficking routes along interstate highways. Each line represented countless hours of detective work, piecing together cell phone data, traffic camera footage, and witness statements. A detective stood before the evidence board, adding new photos and connecting more threads. The Rest Stop Rescue had opened a door into a world they'd been trying to crack for months. Gas station receipts, hotel records, and surveillance footage painted a picture of organized criminal activity stretching from North Carolina to Tennessee and beyond. In a nearby conference room, analysts pored over data from the suspects' seized devices. Hidden beneath layers of encrypted messages, they discovered detailed schedules of movement, contact lists, and locations of safe houses. Each revelation led to more search warrants, more raids, and more rescues. The young survivor's testimony proved invaluable. Working with trained counselors, she helped identify locations where she'd been held. She remembered small details: a distinctive mailbox at one house, a broken neon sign at a motel, the color of curtains in a safe house. These details, seemingly insignificant, helped investigators confirm locations and build their case. Local police departments coordinated simultaneous raids across 3 states. SWAT teams moved in precision, securing locations before evidence could be destroyed. Each raid brought new discoveries, more victims, more suspects, more evidence of a network that had operated in plain sight. One detective, reviewing security footage from various locations, noticed a pattern. The traffickers used rest stops and gas stations as transfer points, choosing busy times when their activities would blend with normal traveler traffic. They rotated between different locations, never using the same spot twice in the same month. The investigation revealed how the network recruited vulnerable young people. They used social media platforms, creating elaborate fake profiles and spending weeks building trust with potential victims. The profile seemed genuine, complete with posted photos and manufactured friend networks. It was a sophisticated operation that had evolved to avoid detection. In one of the safe houses, investigators discovered detailed logs of their operations. The traffickers had kept records of everything: dates, locations, profits. Their organization rivaled that of a legitimate business, except their business destroyed lives. The evidence made veteran detectives shake their heads in disbelief. Phone records showed how the network communicated. They used encrypted apps, burner phones, and coded messages. But now, with access to their devices, investigators could finally crack their system. Each decoded message led to more connections, more suspects, and unfortunately, more victims. The survivors' parents joined the investigation effort, working with family support organizations to help other parents recognize warning signs. They shared their story, how their daughter's social media activity had changed in the weeks before her disappearance, how the traffickers had isolated her from friends and family, how they wished they'd recognized the signs earlier. Computer forensics teams traced the network's digital footprint. They discovered hundreds of fake social media profiles, each crafted to appeal to different types of vulnerable young people. The profiles were sophisticated, with years of manufactured history and carefully curated content designed to build trust. In a breakthrough moment, investigators identified a pattern in the network's money movement. They used small deposits across multiple accounts, never enough to trigger banking alerts. But when traced together, the transactions revealed the scale of their operation, hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through seemingly legitimate businesses. The investigation expanded to include financial crimes units. They'd followed money trails through shell companies and fake businesses, uncovering a complex system designed to hide trafficking profits. Each financial discovery strengthened the case and provided new leads to follow. Law enforcement worked with highway patrol units to establish new monitoring protocols at rest stops and travel centers. They trained staff to recognize suspicious behavior and provided emergency contact procedures. The rest stop where the rescue occurred became a model for these new security measures. Local businesses near identified trafficking locations began sharing security footage. Hotel staff came forward with stories of suspicious guests. Gas station attendants remembered unusual patterns of behavior. The community became part of the investigation, providing crucial pieces of information that helped complete the puzzle. As the case grew, so did the support network for survivors. Counselors, medical professionals, and victim advocates worked together to provide comprehensive care. Each survivor's story helped authorities better understand the network's operations and led to more rescues. The investigation revealed how the traffickers chose their routes. They used less traveled highways, avoided areas with strong law enforcement presence, and carefully timed their movements to avoid detection. But now, with their patterns exposed, these same routes became their weakness. In one particularly successful operation, investigators used the network's own methods against them. They monitored identified routes and coordinated with local law enforcement to intercept vehicles matching known patterns. Each successful intervention led to more rescues and more arrests. The young survivors' courage inspired other victims to come forward. They shared their stories with investigators, each account adding new details and leading to more arrests. Their testimony would be crucial in ensuring the traffickers faced justice. As weeks passed, the investigation's scope continued to grow. What began with one brave girl's hand signal at a rest stop had evolved into one of the largest trafficking investigations in recent history. The case highlighted both the sophistication of modern trafficking networks and the importance of public awareness in fighting them. The detective team worked tirelessly, knowing that each day could bring another rescue. They coordinated with federal agencies, shared information across state lines, and maintained constant communication with support services for survivors. Their dedication matched the complexity of the case they were unraveling. Throughout it all, they kept returning to the moment that began everything: a simple hand signal recognized by an observant former Marine at a rest stop. It proved that sometimes the smallest actions could trigger the largest changes. 3 months after the rest stop rescue, the young survivor sat in her therapist's office, sharing another small victory in her recovery journey. She had returned to school part-time, surrounded by a support system of teachers, counselors, and friends who helped her regain a sense of normalcy. Each day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. The healing process wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others. But with professional help and unwavering family support, she found her strength growing. Her therapist specialized in trauma recovery, using techniques that helped her process her experiences and build resilience. Together, they worked through the difficult moments and celebrated the progress. Her parents attended family therapy sessions, learning how to support their daughter's recovery while dealing with their own emotional trauma. The family bond grew stronger through shared healing. They learned to communicate more openly, to recognize signs of stress, and to create a safe environment where feelings could be expressed freely. Meanwhile, Cooper, the Marine veteran whose observation skills had sparked the rescue, received recognition from local law enforcement. At a private ceremony, the police chief presented him with a Civilian Service Award. Cooper accepted it humbly, insisting that the real hero was the young survivor who had the courage to signal for help. The ceremony sparked media interest in the hand signal that had saved the girl's life. News outlets began running stories about the importance of recognizing distress signals. Social media platforms shared tutorials teaching people how to both make and recognize the signal. The simple gesture became a powerful tool in the fight against trafficking. Local schools invited trafficking awareness experts to speak with students and parents. The presentations covered online safety, recognition of grooming tactics, and the importance of trusting one's instincts when something feels wrong. The survivors' parents, though maintaining their daughter's privacy, helped develop educational materials that could prevent other families from experiencing similar trauma. Rest stop employees across the state received specialized training in recognizing suspicious behavior. The program, developed with input from law enforcement and trafficking experts, taught staff how to safely report concerns and respond to potential distress signals. The rest stop where the rescue occurred became a model for implementing these new safety protocols. Cooper began speaking at veterans groups, sharing his experience and encouraging others to stay vigilant in civilian life. He emphasized how military training, the ability to observe, assess, and act decisively, could serve communities in unexpected ways. His talks inspired other veterans to get involved in community safety initiatives. The police department expanded its training programs, using the case as a teaching tool for new officers. They emphasized the importance of quick response times, coordinated efforts, and sensitivity when dealing with trafficking survivors. The successful rescue became a blueprint for handling similar situations. Support services for trafficking survivors saw increased funding and resources. New programs were developed, focusing on long-term recovery and reintegration. The survivors' experience helped shape these services, ensuring they addressed both immediate needs and ongoing support requirements. The local community rallied around the cause. Business owners installed security cameras and trained their staff. Truck drivers formed networks to report suspicious activity at rest stops. Hotel workers learned to recognize warning signs. The collective effort created a safer environment for everyone. The survivor's school implemented new safety measures while helping her return to normal teenage life. Teachers received training in trauma-informed education. Her classmates, guided by counselors, learned how to be supportive without being intrusive. The school became a safe space where she could focus on her future. As months passed, the survivor began cautiously sharing her story with other young people through supervised support groups. Her experiences helped others understand the tactics traffickers use and the importance of staying alert. Her strength inspired other survivors to seek help and begin their own recovery journeys. Local law enforcement noticed a significant increase in community reporting of suspicious activity. The public had become more aware and more willing to speak up when something didn't seem right. This increased vigilance led to several more successful interventions and rescues. Cooper continued his role in the ongoing investigation, providing testimony that helped prosecutors build strong cases against the traffickers. His detailed observations from the rest stop, combined with his professional background, made him a credible and compelling witness. The survivors' family worked with counselors to rebuild their lives while supporting their daughter's recovery. They moved forward together, finding strength in their shared experience and determination to help others. Their home became a sanctuary of healing and hope. Technology companies began implementing new safety features on their platforms, inspired by the case. Social media sites improved their monitoring systems and added easier ways for users to report suspicious behavior. The digital landscape slowly became safer for young users. The rest stop installed a permanent plaque, not naming anyone involved, but reminding travelers to stay aware and speak up if they notice something wrong. The simple bronze plate became a symbol of how ordinary places could become sites of extraordinary change. As the one-year anniversary of the rescue approached, the survivor prepared to start a new chapter in her life. She had applied to colleges, dreaming of a future in psychology where she could help other trauma survivors. Her recovery journey had shown her the power of resilience and the importance of professional support. Cooper occasionally visited the rest stop where it all began, reflecting on how a routine coffee break had led to such significant changes. He kept in touch with the investigating officers, gratified to hear about the ongoing positive impacts of that morning's events. The case continued to influence policy and procedure in law enforcement and social services. New protocols were developed, incorporating lessons learned from the rescue and its aftermath. The ripple effects of that morning at the rest stop continued to create positive change. Through it all, the focus remained on turning a traumatic experience into something that could help others. The survivor's strength, Cooper's awareness, law enforcement's response, and the community's support all combined to create lasting change. It showed how ordinary people, staying alert and willing to help, could make extraordinary differences in others' lives. 1 year after the dramatic rest stop rescue, a quiet revolution in public safety was taking shape across the country. Rest stops, once just places for weary travelers to take breaks, had transformed into awareness hubs. Staff members received regular training, security cameras were upgraded, and informational posters about safety signals could be found in every restroom. The training program that started at a single rest stop had spread to hundreds of locations. Employees learned not just what to look for, but how to respond safely and effectively. They shared stories of successful interventions where their training helped them recognize and report suspicious situations before they escalated. Truck drivers became unexpected heroes in this new safety network. Their constant presence on highways made them ideal observers. A special hotline was created for drivers to report concerns, and their reports led to numerous successful interventions. These road warriors formed their own support network, sharing information and watching out for signs of trafficking. The young survivor, now preparing for college, had found her voice as an advocate. While maintaining her privacy, she worked with counselors to develop educational programs for schools. Her experience helped shape how young people learned about online safety and the importance of trusting their instincts. Local schools implemented new safety education programs, moving beyond simple warnings to teach practical safety skills. Students learned about digital security, recognizing manipulation tactics, and the importance of maintaining real-world connections. The curriculum, developed with input from survivors and experts, became a model for schools nationwide. Cooper's role evolved too. He began working with a veterans organization that helped former service members use their training to serve their communities. His story inspired others to stay alert and involved in public safety. The program spread to veterans groups across the country, creating networks of trained observers in countless communities. Rest stop employees nationwide reported a significant change in how they viewed their roles. They weren't just serving coffee or maintaining facilities anymore. They were part of a larger safety network. Their increased awareness and willingness to report concerns led to numerous interventions and rescues. The hand signal that started it all became widely known. Social media platforms shared tutorials, Schools included it in safety training, and public spaces displayed information about distress signals. What began as a viral TikTok trend had become a universal symbol for "I need help." Transportation companies joined the effort, training their staff to recognize warning signs. Bus drivers, flight attendants, and train conductors learned to spot potential trafficking situations. The transportation industry's involvement created a nationwide network of alert professionals ready to help. Technology companies developed new safety features for their platforms. Social media sites improved their monitoring systems and made it easier to report suspicious behavior. Apps were created to help people discreetly signal for help or contact emergency services. The digital landscape slowly became safer for vulnerable users. The community's response continued to evolve. Hotels implemented new check-in procedures and trained their staff to recognize warning signs. Gas station attendants learned to watch for specific behaviors. Shopping centers installed better security systems. Each small change added another layer of protection. Law enforcement agencies across the country studied the case, learning from its success. They developed new response protocols and improved their coordination with other agencies. The emphasis shifted from reaction to prevention, with more resources dedicated to identifying and stopping trafficking before it occurred. The survivor's family became advocates for change in their own way. They worked with parent groups to help others recognize warning signs and understand how traffickers operate. Their experience helped other families protect their children and know what to do if they suspected problems. Support services for survivors expanded significantly. New programs focused on long-term recovery and reintegration. The emphasis wasn't just on immediate rescue, but on helping survivors rebuild their lives and find their strength. Success stories inspired hope and showed that recovery was possible. The legal system saw changes too. Prosecutors used lessons learned from the case to build stronger cases against traffickers. Laws were updated to better address modern trafficking methods. The justice system became more effective at holding perpetrators accountable while protecting survivors. Research organizations studied the impact of these changes. They found that increased public awareness and better trained observers led to more successful interventions. The simple act of teaching people to recognize and respond to distress signals had created a significant shift in public safety. Companies began including safety awareness in their employee training. From retail workers to delivery drivers, more people learned to recognize and report concerns. This expanded network of aware individuals made it harder for traffickers to operate unnoticed. The rest stop where it all began became a symbol of hope and change. A small garden was planted there, dedicated to survivors and those who helped them. The plaque beside it reminded travelers that simple awareness could save lives. The young survivor, preparing to start college, chose to study psychology with a focus on trauma recovery. Her experience had shown her the importance of professional support in healing. She planned to use her education to help other survivors find their path to recovery. Cooper continued his morning coffee stops at rest areas during his travels, but now with a deeper appreciation for the role these ordinary places could play in public safety. His military training had taught him to stay alert, but this experience showed him how civilian awareness could be just as crucial. The lasting impact of that morning at the rest stop continued to ripple outward. Each new training program, each successful intervention, each survivor who found help traced back to that moment when one person recognized a signal and chose to act. It proved that small actions, multiplied across many people and places, could create significant change. As the story spread, it reminded people that heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry badges. Sometimes they're the truck driver who notices something wrong, the hotel clerk who trusts their instincts, or the former Marine who pays attention during his coffee break. Each person who stayed aware and willing to help became part of a larger safety net, protecting vulnerable people and making the world a little safer. Law enforcement agencies across the country studied the case, learning from its success. They developed new response protocols and improved their coordination with other agencies. The emphasis shifted from reaction to prevention, with more resources dedicated to identifying and stopping trafficking before it occurred. The survivor's family became advocates for change in their own way. They worked with parent groups to help others recognize warning signs and understand how traffickers operate. Their experience helped other families protect their children and know what to do if they suspected problems. Support services for survivors expanded significantly. New programs focused on long-term recovery and reintegration. The emphasis wasn't just on immediate rescue, but on helping survivors rebuild their lives and find their strength. Success stories inspired hope and showed that recovery was possible. The legal system saw changes too. Prosecutors used lessons learned from the case to build stronger cases against traffickers. Laws were updated to better address modern trafficking methods. The justice system became more effective at holding perpetrators accountable while protecting survivors. Research organizations studied the impact of these changes. They found that increased public awareness and better trained observers led to more successful interventions. The simple act of teaching people to recognize and respond to distress signals had created a significant shift in public safety. Companies began including safety awareness in their employee training. From retail workers to delivery drivers, more people learned to recognize and report concerns. This expanded network of aware individuals made it harder for traffickers to operate unnoticed. The rest stop where it all began became a symbol of hope and change. A small garden was planted there, dedicated to survivors and those who helped them. The plaque beside it reminded travelers that simple awareness could save lives. The young survivor, preparing to start college, chose to study psychology with a focus on trauma recovery. Her experience had shown her the importance of professional support in healing. She planned to use her education to help other survivors find their path to recovery. Cooper continued his morning coffee stops at rest areas during his travels, but now with a deeper appreciation for the role these ordinary places could play in public safety. His military training had taught him to stay alert, but this experience showed him how civilian awareness could be just as crucial. The lasting impact of that morning at the rest stop continued to ripple outward. Each new training program, each successful intervention, each survivor who found help traced back to that moment when one person recognized a signal and chose to act. It proved that small actions, multiplied across many people and places, could create significant change. As the story spread, it reminded people that heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry badges. Sometimes they're the truck driver who notices something wrong, the hotel clerk who trusts their instincts, or the former Marine who pays attention during his coffee break. Each person who stayed aware and willing to help became part of a larger safety net, protecting vulnerable people and making the world a little safer.